They seem to be everywhere, but are they? We're talking about Citi Bikes, the blue bikes that you rent to get you from point A to point B all over New York City and beyond. A new report claims that more than 3/4 of New Yorkers do not have access to the bikes, and that those who do are wealthier, whiter, and better educated. Lyft, which operates Citi Bike, had this to say. Ensuring that diverse communities have access to Citi Bike is central to our mission. From Bed-Stuy to Harlem, there are thousands of public housing residents and low-income New Yorkers who have joined Citi Bike for only $5 a month. While the City Department of Transportation says, we look forward to the forthcoming expansion of Citi Bike, bringing additional geographic and demographic diversity to its coverage area and ridership. This follows expansion in recent years into communities such as Harlem, Red Hook, and Bushwick, as well as a dockless bike pilot in the Bronx. Joining me now is the author of that study, David Walksmith. David, welcome to Chasing News. How are you?
Good. Very good to be here.
I think Lyft made a pretty good point about this, that they've got thousands of public housing residents joining for $5 a month. What was the purpose and point of your study?
What we wanted to do was answer a very simple question, which was who has access to Citi Bike and who doesn't? And what we found was actually pretty simple. It's that Citi Bike overwhelmingly serves the most privileged parts of New York City and overwhelmingly does not serve the least privileged. For example, all the neighborhoods in New York with average incomes above $200,000 a year, so pretty wealthy areas, they all have very easy access to bike sharing. If you look at all the poorest neighborhoods in New York, where incomes less than $20,000 a year, what we find is that more than 7 in 10 of those neighborhoods don't have any access at all.
So by saying the word whiter, are you accusing Lyft of being racist?
No, we're just looking at the empirical facts. And so one way to think about this is that when the network opened in 2013, it was a lot smaller than it is today. I think it would be pretty reasonable for Citi Bike and for the city to start with a pretty modest bike sharing network because they're just getting going. But they've had 6 years to expand. And when we look at the areas that have gained bike sharing access in those 6 years, what we find again is that it's a very privileged part of the city, and that by and large, communities of color, low-income communities have just been left out. And the thing that's really bad about this is that these are the people who would most benefit from bike sharing because they don't necessarily have good access to cars, and in a lot of cases don't have good access to the subway.
Okay, thanks, David. Appreciate it. Let's bring in tonight's A-plus panel to break this down. We're joined by Afia Yunus, immigration attorney. Good to see you, Afia.
You too, Bill.
And Matt Rooney, who is a Republican strategist, also an attorney. Good to see you, Matt. Matt, I'll start with you. I asked the question, is this about race? You hear the words white, you hear the words privilege. Lyft is a private company, and they're expanding. I don't even see where the problem is.
I have a real problem when we shame private companies for economic decisions. If it was economically feasible for them to be in neighborhoods, I'm sure Lyft would want to make the money and they'd want to be there. So maybe it's either not profitable, or maybe it's because they just haven't gotten there yet as they continue to expand their infrastructure. I know it's easy to forget because it feels like they've been around forever, but they haven't.
The fact that they actually looked at users and there was no disparity in users proves that they should actually put these bikes in these lower income neighborhoods because they're using them. So economically, it does make sense.
Look, with all due respect to my good buddy Afia and the rest of the woke police, Lyft is a very successful company. I'm going to trust their economic horse sense over where they need to be and when they can get there over the talking heads. Everything's not a social justice issue. This is economic. This company's expanding, and we're sure as heck not going to help them expand if we invent non-issues just to make a political point, which is what's happening.
Yeah, but I just want to say the right is always making everything an economics issue. And I refuse to live in a society where everything is about money. I mean, if something is having a racial disparity, it's having a racial disparity, and we need to acknowledge that. It's not all about dollars and cents.
So who should pay for it? Should we have a bicycle tax in New York City?
There needs to be some type of solution. But to say, oh, let's just let companies do what they do because they're just concerned about money and we're not going to get involved, I mean, that's ridiculous.
Why don't we subsidize BMWs? Why don't we subsidize Apple MacBooks? If we start going through every individual product and service and seeing whether every neighborhood has it exactly, I mean, that's no way to build an economy. That might make sense.
Why don't we do this and this and this?
That kind of ridiculous logic may make sense to Ocasio-Cortez or someone else that flunked basic mathematics, but it doesn't work in the real world.
To that point, Afia, you're willing to pay more taxes so that the poor neighborhoods can have Citi Bikes?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, hey, put your money where your mouth is, right, Matt? What are you going to do?
Hey, as long as it's not my money.